Let me tell you how the dark forces of the left, and I call them dark forces because that's what they really are. Let me tell you how they actually work. First of all, they're not interested in truth. They are interested in destroying anybody who disagrees with them, even if they have to make stuff up. Let me take you back in time, and I'm going to give you a very real world example, maybe more than one, of something that happened to me. I think it was around 1992, I was sitting in my talk studio office and reading the Oregonian newspaper, which is basically something to. I used to have a few cockatiels, and they didn't even want that on the bottom of their cage. Um, they didn't want to read it. Well, they didn't mind pooping on it, but they didn't want to read it. But back during that time, I'm reading this article, and there were two reporters. That's what they called themselves. Um, they're really truly propagandists who probably never came across a fact that they could actually use. But there were two reporters that had written this article about Christians, and they were implying that all Christians, get this, all Christians were like the Aryan Nation. You know, the Aryan Nation, white supremacist organization, it's anti-Jewish, anti-Catholic, anti-other races, and blah, blah, blah. Now, I am a Christian. Just get that right out to you so you know it. And I was reading that, and being a talk show host, I was very interested in getting to the bottom of this and debating it, disputing it, because it was a bald-faced piece of crap, folks. But what do you expect from the Oregonian? So I called the Oregonian up, and I said, I would like to get one or both of the reporters that wrote this specific article on my talk show, let them present their views, and I will correct all of the lies that they tell. And I didn't quite say it that way, but that was my intent. And what was the response? Both of these brave reporters refused to come on my show. Why? Because they knew they didn't have a leg to stand on. So I thought about this for a little while. And I'm really big on truth. If you follow my channel, if you follow my content here, whether you're on Rumble or YouTube or TikTok, I try to deal in absolute truth and absolute facts. So I thought, I need to create a contrast. I need to present the real facts. I need to dispute this. How am I going to do it? Well, what I decided to do is go to their non-source material, but the idea that they were trying to present, that all Christians support the Aryan Nation. And so what did I do? I called the Aryan Nation, and I believe at that time, probably still at that time, that they were in Idaho. I called and said, look, I want to have Pastor Richard Butler, and I use that term pastor loosely. He probably should have gone by another name that sort of rhymes with pastor, but that's what he was known as, Richard Butler. And he was the head of the Aryan Nation. I said, look, I want to debate you. I want to debate you, and I'm going to set you straight. Would you come on my show? And I was going to give him 3 hours of time on my talk show in the Portland area. And oddly, unlike the miscreants at the Oregonian, he agreed. And so I started talking about it. We scheduled it, I think it was maybe February of 1992, approximately. But I scheduled it, started talking about it, saying that, a couple of weeks from now, I'm going to do this and this and this. And a day or two later, I got a call from somebody in the Portland police. And at that time, And I don't mean to demean them now because Portland has a terrible mayor and he has totally screwed up the police department there and tried to make them all go woke. They've been snorting too much woke in Portland for a long time. But he was trying to get, he's trying to change it so that we could have more Antifa and more fires and more chaos, etc. Man, he's kind of succeeded. But back then, very good police officers, a lot of them were friends of mine. But I got a call from somebody, he was either in the undercover or the gang unit or a combination of both. And he said, Stuart, I believe he was a lieutenant. Don't quote me on that. I'm going strictly from memory. But he said, Stuart, don't do the show because there's going to be a hit on your life. They're going to kill you. Speaking of apparently that white supremacist type of organization. And I was still a fairly young talk show host at that time. And I'm thinking, oh, great. Think of the ratings. Think of the ratings I'll get when they try to kill me. And I said, no, I've got to do it. And really, it wasn't just about ratings. It was about truth. I'm really big on facts and truth, which I think will be clear if you start listening or viewing all of my videos. That's what I want to get to. And I'm going to be one of the few people in the industry that will actually do this. Charlie Kirk walked on a stage repeatedly knowing that there were threats on his life, etc. And of course, ultimately, it cost him his life, sadly. And I had similar experiences, not to the degree that Charlie did, but I had similar experiences, many death threats, attempts, etc. And I said, no, I'm going to do the show. I'm going to do the show. Then I got a call from a friend of mine at another talk station. He called me up. We had some small talk, and then he said, Stuart, I want to let you know that you are going to be picketed. I said, picketed? Picketed for what? And by who? And he said, he mentioned a group I had never heard of at that time. He said, the radical women in the Freedom Socialist Party are going to picket you. And I said, who are they? And he said, well, they're a group of 6 radical lesbians who seek the armed overthrow of the United States. Now, that's what he told me. And I thought, well, that's interesting. Why do they want to picket me? And they said, because they disagree with the Aryan Nation and Richard Butler. And I said, yeah, but so do I. And I'm exposing Richard Butler and the Aryan Nation. Oh. And he said, well, it doesn't matter. I'm thinking, okay, 6 radical women, the Freedom Socialist Party ladies are going to picket me. Big deal. And it turned out it was a big deal. The closer I got to doing the show, I kept getting these calls. I kept getting these threats. And when I am faced with opposition, I am the type of guy who is determined to get to the bottom and recite the truth. Wherever the truth leads, I want to deal with that because people need to know. And I wasn't going to put up with this crap from the Portland Oregonian and their 2 miscreants who claim to be reporters. So I thought, no, I'm going to continue. And then I started getting police protection because apparently the threats were real. And I had to, earlier in my career, I had to move like 35, 40 miles away from my talk studio and take a different route home every night because the far left want to kill you. They either want to destroy you or they want to kill you, sometimes both. And to protect my family, I had 4 little kids at home, I would take an extra half an hour, 45 minutes to go home every night after my show, and I would go through back streets, never take the same route. I mean, typical security. I got to the point where I had to check underneath my car for bombs. I mean, at times I had police over with bomb-sniffing dogs, etc. But, that's part of the price of doing what's right. So, I get to the day that I was doing the talk show. And man, a lot of police presence, bomb-sniffing dogs. I had all sorts of things going on. And I'm sure most of the police that I saw were in uniform. And I'm sure we had some undercover. I don't know how many they were, but there were a lot. And you know something? They were needed. And as we got closer to the show, every TV station that I recall in town, and let me show you what the left kind of does. Every TV station in town showed up. They were going to film things. They wanted permission to film just outside my talk studio. You know, I had a fairly good size talk studio, which was maybe 400 square feet, giving room for people to sit around the table, my mic, the boom mics, all of that. And I already had bright enough lights inside the talk studio, but they would set up all of their, 10 million watt light bulbs. It's like being on spotlights all around this studio. But they sent all African American reporters. And the TV stations obviously had the agenda. Here, we're going to show this Christian who happens to be a talk show host. We're going to present him as a racist. What the TV stations didn't know is, first of all, I'm not racist. But I knew most of these reporters, these African American reporters, and they were friends of mine. They show up, said, Stuart, we got to do this, and we're under orders from the talk station. I said, man, don't worry about it, or from the news station, don't worry about it. You guys can come in when it's time, and we set it up. In the meantime, hours before the show was going to launch, the picketers started to show up. Now, here I was expecting 6, and then it grew to 10, and by the time it was done, just before the show, there were 3,000 people there that had lined up all across the parking lot, down along Interstate 5 there, just outside of Portland. I mean, 3,000 of them. Some of the weirdest people you could possibly imagine. I mean, the bones through the nose and the shaved heads and just crazy stuff. And I'm fine, folks. Hey, if that's your thing, you want to shave your head, put bones through your nose, and yeah, do whatever you want. I don't care. That's up to you. But I'm sitting there thinking, what the heck is going on? We've gone from 6 to 3,000. And I finally turned to the police there, and I said, look, I'm going to go outside and address the crowd. I'm going to address the crowd. Now, remember, my purpose for doing this particular talk show on that particular day with that particular evil guest that I wanted to expose was just that. I wanted to show, no, we're not like that at all. Now, most Christians, I'd say 99% aren't like that at all. And I mean, they've got other problems, but not like that at all. And I wanted to expose them. And I thought, well, I'm going to go out and talk to this crowd. And the police didn't want me to go out. Said, we can't guarantee your safety if you're out there in front of everybody. And I thought, no, it's going to be all right. So I went out, and I had a Charlie Kirk moment. Not the extreme moment yet. But I walked out, and I'm looking at the crowd. I said, hi, I'm Stuart White, and we're going to do this expose. And they started spitting on me, calling me a Nazi, calling me, every name in the book, throwing stuff at me, no rocks or anything at this particular time, because the police were everywhere. But people in Portland are kind of, the far left there is absolutely insane and really don't give a hoot about truth. And while they're calling me these names and throwing stuff at me, I said, why are you here? I asked one young guy. And he said, well, because they told us that, well, go ahead, tell me. He says, well, there's a picket going on. A lot of the people in that crowd, they just showed up because someone said, hey, let's go picket this guy. They had no idea why they were there. And that's because the far left you will find, you take somebody like AOC, hateful people like that, many of the other ones, they are never steeped in facts. They are steeped in destruction because they figure if they shout enough, well, they can destroy conservatives and people will buy into their garbage. So these guys didn't know, but there were those 3,000 out there, and I thought, oh, crap, well, this is going to be interesting. How am I going to get home? If I get home, if I can even leave the parking lot. So anyway, we get to the time of the show. And remember, we're going to do 3 hours of the show. So I've got all of these black news reporters there. I've got all their cameras. I've got all these bright lights surrounding me. which I didn't mind except for the bright lights because my talk studio at that time was normally cool in there. But man, that was heating things up. It was going to get hotter in there than the actual debate that I was going to have with this evil Richard Butler. And the show started off. I had the lines open. The phone lines were, of course, they were going crazy. And I can't remember how many lines we had at that time. It was probably 8 to 10. But they were already starting to go crazy. And the show starts, and I introduced Richard Butler. I was polite. But I said, you present this type of view of Christianity. And he started his anti-Semitic charade. He said, I can prove anything. I can prove any of the beliefs that we have. I said, well, I'm the guy here who is going to prove that you're wrong. And he didn't particularly like that, but we started off with a bang. And for the next 3 hours, while I was polite, I absolutely decimated him because he's a fraud. He was an evil man. And I guess, nowadays I don't like the Aryan Nation even more because they murdered somebody I know. And yes, they did. And of course, they were already having life in prison at that particular time. So another murder. What did the state of Arizona do to him? Well, we're going to give you another life. You're going to be in prison for life. Well, they all already had the 3 guys who stabbed him, almost 100 times. They already had life in prison. I'll tell you more about that story at another time. But evil guys. But anyway, the show went off great. He got decimated. A lot of callers called in, and some in support of him. Remember, it's Portland. It's weird. But most in support of my views. And I would go on a break, and I'd step out of the talk studio. And some of the breaks, like if you're at the top of the hour, the way radio oftentimes works, you'll end just maybe a minute or so before the top of the hour. You'll have a news break, a couple of commercials maybe, and it lasts about 6 minutes. So I would exit the talk studio, and I would step out and talk to some of the reporters. And my black reporter friends said, Stuart, there's really nothing here to condemn you for. And I said, yeah, I know. We're after the truth. And anyway, that show ended. And oddly enough, for Portland, I got some of the best media coverage I'd had in my entire career. Newspaper articles written about it, news on TV, other talk show hosts talked about it. And it was 95% positive. Yeah, there were some who tried to spin things. But their spinning didn't work. And of course, the crowd began to disperse. I couldn't leave the talk studio for quite some time after the show. And the police were out there again, dogs sniffing for bombs and doing all this stuff, whatever it is that they do. And eventually I left, went home. Now, that is one example of the evil of the left and what they do. Crazy stuff. And then not too long after that, and I don't remember the exact timing of this, because here's point number 2, another evil. I was at home, and I got this phone call. Well, actually, my wife answered the phone, and she said, honey, it's for you. And I got on the phone, and I said, hello. And this really weird voice said, this is Michael. That was his name. I'm going to kill you. Oh, okay. Well, Michael, why do you want to kill me? Because you're a Christian and I disagree with you. No, okay. Well, what do you want to talk about, Michael? I'm going to kill you. I'm going to hunt you down and I'm going to shoot you. And you're going to be dead. I thought, well, okay. I found it an interesting conversation. In that business, I'd had plenty of death threats, and some of them were almost carried out. And I won't tell you about the Seattle incidents right now. We'll stick with Portland. But I thought, oh, okay, another creep. And I said, Michael, how did you get this phone number? And it turns out that a receptionist at my talk station gave him the phone number, which you don't do for the talent. the celebrity, the talk show host. And, and yet she gave it out. And here was the weird thing. He started calling me literally 23 hours a day. And I mean literally 23 hours a day. He'd call me at home. He'd call me at the talk studio. He would call me while I was on the show. And he would call, Stuart, I told you I'm going to kill you. I am going to hunt you down and kill you. And it's like, well, you already know where I am. I'm at the talk studio. Michael. And I had a talk show host friend of mine. He called me up and said, look, that guy showed up at our station to kill one of our guys. He came in with a gun. The police arrested him. You have to take what he says seriously. He has been in Damish Mental Hospital, I think they told me, 23 times. And he said, if he tells you he's going to kill you, he's going to kill you. Then I got a phone call from the Secret Service. This was interesting. And the Secret Service said, we have been following after this guy for a long time. Yes, he's got mental problems, but he has threatened the president. I guess he had threatened presidents throughout his career. And actually, maybe it was 1993 because they'd mentioned Clinton. But he said, you need to take him seriously. I found that interesting, but I would be on the talk show for the next few days. I'd be doing my show, and suddenly I would get, here's Michael from whatever part of Portland he happened to be in, and he'd come on, Stuart, I'm going to kill you. Okay, great. And I started getting tired of this. He'd call me before the show, and I'd say, Michael, I'm going to call the police. He said, call them. I'll call you back. And so I would call the police. Some police would come out. And Michael would call, and he'd say, my name is Michael. I live at such and such address. Come over and get me because I'm going to kill Stuart. And that's not too bright. But this went on for a while, and it was really heating up. Finally, I was starting to get fed up by it. It puts on a lot of stress in the sense that I really didn't worry much about me. I can take care of myself. But I didn't want my family involved. I didn't know, is he going to show up at my house, kill my wife and 4 little boys? So I got fed up, and I started talking about it on the air. I mean, people would hear him, because sometimes I would let him on the show to talk, because I wanted some evidence that everybody could see. And so he would come on the show, and he would talk, and he would say, this is what I'm going to do. You're dead. I'm going to kill you. Okay, Michael, thanks. And this went on for a while. And so finally I got utterly and absolutely fed up. And after talking with the police, I called the district attorney in Portland at that time, who was an absolute waste of one of the chief legal enforcers in Portland, let's say. I'm going to try to be nice. And they wouldn't do anything. Absolutely nothing. Here's a guy making terroristic threats, planning on killing me, had been arrested before for trying to kill another talk show host, or at least showing up at their station with a gun to kill them. Here's a guy who was obviously deranged. They weren't going to do a damn thing. This is how the left works. They were kind of hoping that I would get killed, because in Portland I was one of the very few conservative talk show hosts. And by conservative, I simply mean I would go after the facts, line them up, look at the truth, get to the bottom of things. And I had conservative views in the sense that, hey, you want to change things, then you tell me why that your way is better than, say, the traditional way. Not that all traditions are good, but convince me otherwise. Prove me wrong. And, well, they couldn't. But anyway, the left likes to get rid of people like me. They've been trying to do it on TikTok. I think TikTok has been helping them. Well, I got to be careful. But they've been trying to do it with me for a long time. And they've come very, very close at times. But I finally got fed up, absolutely fed up. So I went on the air on the talk show, and Michael called. I let him come on. And you might say, well, that was stupid, against your better judgment. No, I was trying to make a point. So I let him say his stuff, and I cut him off. I disconnected him. And I said, folks, I have talked to the district attorney's office here in Portland. And as you can see, this threat is real. I gave them the background of it. And I said, and that miscreant sitting in that office won't do anything about this. You know, I mean, nowadays, yeah, they want Antifa to come in and burn the city down. We've seen that repeatedly. Remember, but it's mostly peaceful. And I said, here is her phone number. Call her. And tell her that you want her to do something. And apparently, the phones at the district attorney's office went crazy because my audience, which was a pretty good sized audience, started calling the next day, and guess what happened? Michael got arrested. No, that's not the end of the story. It should have been, but it wasn't the end of the story. They arrested him, finally. And guess what? You think the call stopped then? Michael started calling me from jail. I'm still going to kill you, but I'm going to give you a chance. You drop all the charges, don't testify, but you're still going to kill me. Weird. So that's known as witness intimidation, tampering with witnesses, etc. And last I heard, folks, Michael finally got convicted and allegedly got 10 years in prison. Now, I never followed up more than a year or so afterwards because I wanted to know where he was. So, well, I always had to look over my shoulder because the far left is kind of demonically inspired. I was looking for him. Is he going to be out? Because who knows? Portland does some crazy crap, and they still do. Anyway, these are some ways that the far left works. They want to destroy. They want to kill. They can't fight in the arena of ideas, but they can scream. They can put together pickets. They can threaten. They can do all sorts of things. But you want to know something? I can't be intimidated, and you shouldn't either. And while I don't want what happened to Charlie Kirk to happen to me, it could, though I'm probably less of a threat now because I'm off the air. But who knows? I still get threats for talking about things on TikTok. And TikTok doesn't do much of anything about it. But I'm still here. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. I really wanted you to know this is what the far left does. It's like they're demonically inspired. You may not believe in demons, but I can show you some of them. Just look at the modern day Democratic Party. Not all of you Democrats out there, but I'm talking about the DNC and AOC and CBS and ABC. I know they're not exactly connected, but kind of. We like those little acronyms. Anyway, that's all I've got for you now. We'll have more great content coming up later. And have a great day. God bless. Bye.